The morning frost clung to Marcus Kane's weathered boots as he made his way through the silent wilderness of Kepler 442b. At 63, he had been patrolling these remote sectors for over 40 years, longer than any other human on this distant world. His graying beard caught the pale light of the alien sun as he checked his scanner for the third time that morning. Something was wrong. The readings were all over the place. Energy signatures that made no sense, temperature fluctuations that defied the planet's usual patterns, and, most concerning of all, traces of technology that didn't match anything in the human database. Marcus had seen plenty of strange things in his decades as a frontier ranger, but this was different. This felt dangerous. He adjusted the pack on his shoulders and continued deeper into the crystalline forest. The trees here weren't really trees at all, but massive mineral formations that had grown over millennia, creating a landscape that looked like nature's own cathedral. The silence was absolute except for the soft crunch of his boots on the frozen ground. Marcus had chosen this life deliberately. After losing his wife and daughter in the colony ship disaster 30 years ago, he couldn't bear to be around crowds anymore. The wilderness offered him peace, purpose, and, most importantly, solitude. He protected the outer settlements from the various dangers that lurked in unexplored space, and, in return, the universe left him alone with his grief. But today his solitude was about to be shattered. The scanner in his hand began beeping frantically as he crested a small hill. Below him, in a clearing surrounded by the tallest crystal formations he'd ever seen, lay something that made him question his sanity. It was massive, easily the size of a cargo transport, with scales that shimmered even under the ice that covered them. Wings, or what he assumed were wings, spread out from its back like frozen sails. A long, serpentine neck ended in a head that was unmistakably reptilian, though unlike any reptile from Earth. "What in the hell?" Marcus whispered, his breath forming clouds in the frigid air. He'd found stories of dragons in the old Earth databases, mythical creatures from humanity's past. But this wasn't mythology. This was real, alien, and apparently dying. Marcus scrambled down the hillside, his ranger training overriding his shock. Whatever this creature was, it was clearly in distress. The ice covering its body wasn't natural frost. It was too thick, too uniform. Something had flash frozen this being, and recently. As he got closer, he could see the faint rise and fall of its massive chest. It was breathing barely. Marcus pulled out his emergency scanner and ran it over the creature's body. The readings were unlike anything he'd ever seen. The being's physiology was completely alien, but the scanner's AI was doing its best to translate the data into terms he could understand. Severe hypothermia. Massive trauma to what appeared to be its respiratory system. Energy levels critically low, but most intriguingly, the scanner detected artificial implants throughout its body, technology that was far beyond anything humans had developed. Marcus stood there for a long moment, staring at the magnificent creature. Every protocol he'd ever learned told him to report this immediately, to call for backup, to let the scientists and military handle it. But something in the creature's face, even unconscious and half-frozen, spoke to him. It looked peaceful, almost noble, and it was dying. He made a decision that would change everything. Marcus activated his emergency beacon, not to call for help, but to create a perimeter warning. Anyone approaching his location would get a signal that he was conducting a routine wildlife survey and to maintain distance. It will buy him time. He set up his portable shelter, a military-grade structure designed to withstand the worst this planet could throw at him. But instead of setting it up for himself, he positioned it to cover as much of the dragon as possible. The heating units weren't designed for something this large, but they might be enough to start the thawing process. Working quickly, Marcus gathered every heat source he had. Emergency thermal packs, portable heaters, even his own body warmth. He climbed onto the creature's back, spreading the heating elements across its scales and settling in for what he knew would be a long wait. As the hours passed, Marcus found himself talking to the unconscious being. It felt natural somehow, like comforting an injured animal, though this was clearly far more than any animal he'd ever encountered. "Easy there, big guy," he murmured, checking the readings on his scanner. "I don't know what happened to you, but you're safe now. Whatever did this to you, it's gone." The ice began to melt slowly, revealing scales that shifted color in the light like oil on water. They were beautiful, Marcus realized, each one perfectly formed and somehow both alien and familiar. As more of the creature was revealed, he could see old scars, evidence of a life that had seen conflict. His scanner beeped softly. The creature's vital signs were improving, slowly but steadily. Marcus allowed himself a small smile. In 40 years of ranger work, he'd saved countless human lives, but this felt different. More important somehow. As the alien sun began to set, casting strange shadows through the crystal forest, Marcus noticed something that made his heart race. The creature's eyes were open. They were unlike anything he'd ever seen. Large, intelligent, and a color that had no name in any human language, something between gold and silver that seemed to shift with the light. But more than their appearance, it was the intelligence behind them that took his breath away. This wasn't an animal. This was a person. The dragon's head moved slowly, carefully, as if testing that its body still worked. When its gaze fell on Marcus, sitting cross-legged beside its massive head, the creature went very still. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Marcus felt like he was standing at the edge of a cliff, knowing that his next action would determine whether he fell or learned to fly. Slowly, carefully, he raised his hand in what he hoped was a universal gesture of peace. "Hello," he said simply. The creature's response nearly knocked him backward. When it spoke, it wasn't with vocal cords, but directly into his mind, a warm presence that filled his thoughts with concepts and emotions rather than words. Gratitude, confusion, wariness, hope. "You are small, fragile, yet you saved me. Why?" Marcus felt tears prick at the corners of his eyes. In 40 years of solitude, he'd forgotten what it felt like to truly connect with another thinking being. "Because it was the right thing to do," he said aloud. "Because you needed help. I am called Zephyros," the mental voice continued, growing stronger as the creature recovered. Was a guardian of the Nexus fleet. We were attacked by the Devourers. I was the only one to escape, but I was badly damaged. My ship's systems froze me to preserve my life, but the pod malfunctioned. I should have died here." "Devourers?" Marcus asked, though even as he said it, he felt a chill that had nothing to do with the planet's temperature. Images flooded his mind. Massive ships that seemed to eat light itself. Weapons that turned entire star systems into empty space. And at the center of it all, beings of such malevolence that even Zephyros's memories of them felt like ice water in Marcus's veins. They consume worlds, consume life itself. My people tried to stop them, but we were not strong enough. They're coming here, to your space. I escaped to warn others, but the mental voice faded as exhaustion overtook the great being. Marcus sat in the growing darkness, his mind reeling. He'd spent 40 years protecting a small corner of one world, and now he'd stumbled into something that threatened all of human space. But more than that, he'd found someone who understood loss, who had sacrificed everything trying to protect others. He looked at Zephyros, noting how the dragon's breathing had stabilized. "Rest now," he said softly. "Tomorrow we figure out what comes next." But even as he said it, Marcus knew that his quiet life was over. The universe had found him again, and this time it had brought him a responsibility that was literally cosmic in scope. As he settled in for the night beside his new companion, Marcus Kane, elder ranger of the frontier, began to plan for a war he'd never imagined he'd have to fight. But first, he had to keep Zephyros alive. Everything else could wait until morning. The stars above them wheeled in patterns no human I had ever named, and somewhere among them, an enemy beyond imagination was heading their way. But for now, in a crystal forest on the edge of known space, a lonely old man had found purpose again, and an ancient guardian had found hope. The real adventure was just beginning. In the distance, Marcus's scanner picked up the faint signature of ships entering the system. Not human ships. His blood ran cold as he recognized the energy signatures from Zephyros's shared memories. The Devourers had found them. Marcus woke to the sound of his scanner, screaming emergency warnings. The pale dawn light filtered through the crystal formations, but the peaceful morning was shattered by the harsh reality of what his instruments were detecting. 3 ships, massive and wrong in ways that made his trained eye water to look at them, had entered the outer system. Zephyros was already awake, his great head raised toward the sky with an expression of grim determination. The dragon scales had regained much of their luster overnight, shifting from deep purples to brilliant golds as emotions played across his features. "They are here sooner than I hoped." Zephyros's mental voice carried a weight of exhaustion that went beyond the physical. "The Devourers move faster when they sense resistance. They must have detected my survival." Marcus studied the scanner readings, his 40 years of experience automatically cataloging threats and tactical options. "How long do we have?" "Perhaps 2 of your days before they reach this world. But they will not come alone. They will send scouts, probes. The real attack will begin soon after. Then we need to move." Marcus was already breaking down his shelter, muscle memory from decades of emergency evacuations taking over. "The nearest settlement is Port Haven, about 200 kilometers south. We need to warn them, get people evacuated." Zephyros shifted his massive bulk, testing his mobility. The great dragon rose to his full height, and Marcus felt a moment of pure awe at the sight. Standing, Zephyros was nearly 30 meters from nose to tail, with wings that spanned almost as wide. But more impressive than his size was the technology that covered his body. Now that the ice was gone, Marcus could see that what he'd taken for natural scales were actually some kind of biomechanical integration. The dragon was as much machine as creature, a living weapon designed for war. "I cannot fly yet. The damage to my biosystems is too extensive, but I could travel on foot and faster than any ground transport your people possess." Marcus nodded, shouldering his pack. "Then let's go. But first, I need to understand what we're up against. You said your people tried to stop the Devourers and failed. How do we have any chance?" As they began moving through the crystal forest, Zephyros shared his memories more deeply than before. Marcus found himself experiencing visions of a war that had raged across multiple galaxies, fought by beings whose technology and power dwarf humanity's achievements. The Nexus fleet had been an alliance of 12 species, each contributing their unique abilities to create a force unlike anything the universe had seen. Zephyros's people, the Draconic Council, were the warriors and guardians. Their biomechanical integration allowed them to interface directly with their technology, becoming living starships capable of both space travel and atmospheric combat. But the Devourers were something else entirely. They weren't just conquerors, they were a force of entropy given form. Wherever they passed, they left behind empty space, not even debris to mark that civilizations had once thrived there. They consumed matter, energy, even the quantum foam that made up the fabric of space itself. 12 species fell to them. Zephyros continued as they navigated between towering crystal spires. Each thought they understood the enemy. Each believed their technology or their unity would be enough. All were wrong. "Then, what makes you think humanity can do better?" Marcus asked, though he kept moving. Despair was a luxury he couldn't afford right now. The answer surprised him. "Because you are different. Your species fights differently than any we encountered. You do not rely on superior technology or ancient wisdom. You adapt. You improvise. You refuse to surrender even when logic demands it. The Nexus fleet fell because we fought the war we expected to fight. You might fight the war that needs to be fought." They reached the edge of the crystal forest as the alien sun climbed higher in the purple sky. Below them stretched the vast plains that led to Port Haven. In the distance, Marcus could see the smoke trails of the settlement's industrial centers. 20,000 human souls, completely unaware that their entire species was about to be tested. Marcus activated his long-range communicator, switching to the emergency frequency that would reach every settlement on the planet simultaneously. This is Elder Ranger Marcus Kane, ID 77 Alpha. Emergency Protocol Omega is now in effect. This is not a drill. All settlements prepare for immediate evacuation. Unknown hostile forces are approaching the system. Repeat, this is not a drill. The response was immediate chaos. Voices flooded the channel as settlement leaders demanded explanations, coordinates, proof. Marcus had expected this. 40 years of false alarms and routine emergencies had made people skeptical of true catastrophe. Kane, this is Port Haven Control, came a familiar voice. Sarah Chun, the settlement coordinator, had worked with Marcus for over a decade. What's your situation? We're not detecting anything on our long-range sensors. Sarah, you need to trust me on this. Get the evacuation ships ready. Get people moving toward the underground bunkers. I'm en route with intelligence about the threat. Marcus, you're asking me to panic 20,000 people based on your word alone. I need more than that. Marcus looked at Zephyros, who had been listening to the conversation through their mental link. The dragon's expression was understanding, but urgent. Show her, Zephyros said, but prepare her for what she will see. Sarah, I'm transmitting video now. What you're about to see will seem impossible, but I need you to trust what your eyes tell you. Marcus activated his suit's camera system and pointed it at Zephyros. The great dragon had positioned himself to look as non-threatening as possible, but there was no disguising what he was. The communicator fell silent as the transmission went out. When Sarah's voice returned, it was barely a whisper. Marcus, what the hell is that? His name is Zephyros. He's a refugee from a war we didn't even know was happening. And the enemy that destroyed his people is heading here right now. May I speak to her? Zephyros asked. Marcus nodded and opened a mental link to include the communication channel. The result was immediate and dramatic. Oh God, Sarah's voice cracked as Zephyros's presence touched her mind. It's talking to me. Peace, human Sarah. I mean no harm to you or your people. But death comes to this world, and we must prepare. What followed was the fastest intelligence briefing in human history. Zephyros shared selective memories with Sarah, enough to convince her of the threat without overwhelming her mind with the full horror of what the Devourers represented. Within minutes, evacuation alarms were sounding across Port Haven. But Marcus knew evacuation wouldn't be enough. The Devourers didn't just destroy planets. They consumed them utterly. There would be nowhere to run. Zephyros, he said as they began moving across the plains at a pace that left him breathless. Your people had technology beyond our wildest dreams, and they still lost. What can humanity possibly do that the Nexus fleet couldn't? The dragon was quiet for a long moment, his massive strides eating up the kilometers toward Port Haven. When he finally answered, his mental voice carried a note that Marcus couldn't quite identify. Hope, desperation, or something else entirely. There is something about your species that the Devourers have never encountered before. Something that even we of the Nexus fleet found disturbing. What do you mean? You humans have a concept you call spite. The willingness to destroy yourself, if it means denying your enemy victory. The Devourers have consumed 1,000 species, and not one of them has ever chosen to fight a battle they could not win simply to make the victory costly. Your people do this regularly. Marcus thought about that as they ran. It was true. Human history was full of last stands, Pyrrhic victories, and battles fought not for victory but for principle. Thermopylae, the Alamo, the Warsaw Uprising. Humans had always been willing to die if it meant their deaths served a purpose. You think we might actually hurt them? I think you might be the first species to make them regret their attack. And if we can combine your stubborn refusal to surrender with what remains of Nexus technology. The thought was interrupted by a new alarm from Marcus's scanner. Not the approach of the main Devourer fleet, but something smaller, faster, and heading directly for their position. A scout probe, Zephyros identified grimly. They are testing the world's defenses. It will be here within the hour. Marcus checked his weapons. A standard ranger's armament, pulse rifle, sidearm, emergency explosives. Against an alien probe with technology beyond human comprehension, it seemed laughably inadequate. But then he looked at Zephyros and saw that the dragon was smiling. It was a terrifying expression on such a massive predator, but there was something else in it. Anticipation. It has been too long since I fought, the great being said. And this time I will not fight alone. What do you need me to do? Trust me. And when the moment comes, show me that human spite you are so famous for. The probe appeared over the horizon like a dark star, its surface seeming to absorb light rather than reflect it. As it drew closer, Marcus could see that it moved with the same wrongness he'd observed in the larger ships. It didn't fly so much as deny the existence of gravity. Zephyros began to change. The biomechanical systems that covered his body came to life, scales sliding apart to reveal weapon ports and sensor arrays. His wings spread wide, not for flight, but to deploy what looked like energy projection systems. In seconds, the wounded refugee had become something that belonged on a battlefield. Now, Marcus Kane, we see if an old dragon and an older human can teach the universe's apex predators about the dangers of hunting humanity. The probe descended toward them, its sensors no doubt cataloging every detail of the human settlement beyond. But it had made one crucial mistake. It had assumed that the only thing waiting for it was another helpless world ready for consumption. It was about to learn why assumption was a dangerous thing when humanity was involved. The battle for Earth's space was about to begin with two warriors who had nothing left to lose and everything to prove. The Devourer probe descended like a piece of living darkness, its surface rippling with energies that made Marcus's eyes water. It was the size of a shuttle, but moved with the fluid grace of something alive. As it drew closer, he could feel pressure in his mind, as if the thing was trying to read his thoughts. Do not resist the mental probe, Zephyros advised, his own mind suddenly feeling distant and protected. Let's see what it expects to see. Confusion, fear, helplessness. Hide your true nature until the moment strikes. Marcus forced himself to think like a terrified colonist who had never seen anything more dangerous than a hostile weather pattern. It wasn't hard. Part of him genuinely was terrified. But underneath that fear, 40 years of ranger training simmered with cold patience. The probe stopped its descent 50 meters above them, hanging in the air like a malevolent star. Marcus could feel its attention like insects crawling under his skin as it cataloged every detail of his biology, his equipment, his apparent threat level. Through his mental link with Zephyros, he sensed the dragon doing something impossible. The great being was somehow masking his true nature, appearing to the probe's sensors as nothing more than a large native creature, perhaps a predator that posed no real threat to a galactic-level invasion force. They are overconfident, Zephyros explained silently. The Devourers have never encountered significant resistance. Their probes are designed to catalog and assess, not to fight. It will try to capture me alive for study, thinking I am merely an interesting specimen. The probe's scanning intensified, and Marcus felt a moment of vertigo as alien technology attempted to catalog every cell in his body. Then, apparently satisfied with what it had learned, the probe began to descend toward them. Now we discover if 40 years of fighting hostile environments has prepared you for fighting hostile aliens, Zephyros said, and suddenly his mental concealment dropped like a curtain. The change was instantaneous. Biomechanical systems across the dragon's body roared to life with a sound like controlled thunder. Energy coursed through crystalline conduits that ran beneath his scales, and weapon ports open along his neck and shoulders. But more dramatically, Zephyros began to grow. Marcus stumbled backward as his companion's body expanded, nanotechnological systems adding mass and structure until the dragon was twice his previous size. What had been a magnificent creature became an engine of war that radiated power like a miniature sun. The probe's reaction was immediate panic. Its scanning beam cut off as it tried to retreat, but Zephyros was already in motion. Despite his massive size, the dragon moved with serpentine grace, his neck whipping forward to close the distance in an eye blink. Energy weapons that could have leveled buildings fired from the probe, but they struck barriers of crystalline force that materialized around Zephyros like shields made of solid light. The dragon's own weapons responded, streams of coherent plasma that carved through the probe's defensive systems like they were made of paper. "Your turn, Marcus Kane," came Zephyros's mental voice, calm despite the violence surrounding them. "Show me human ingenuity." Marcus didn't hesitate. While Zephyros kept the probe's attention with overwhelming firepower, he sprinted to a position beneath the aerial battle and pulled out every explosive charge in his kit. Working with the speed of long experience, he wired them together into a single device, then activated the magnetic grappler from his emergency climbing gear. The probe was trying to break free from Zephyros's assault, its alien technology finally, recognizing that it faced a threat beyond its ability to handle. But as it pulled away from the dragon's reach, it moved directly into Marcus's trap. The magnetic grappler caught the probe's hull with a metallic clang that rang across the plains. For a moment, the alien device tried to shake off what it probably saw as insignificant debris. Then Marcus triggered the explosives. The blast wasn't powerful enough to destroy the probe, but it was precisely targeted. Instead of trying to breach the alien's armor, Marcus had aimed for its propulsion systems. The explosion tore away crucial components, sending the probe tumbling from the sky in an uncontrolled descent. Zephyros was waiting for it. As the probe crashed into the crystalline ground, the dragon's massive claws descended like the wrath of an ancient god. In seconds, the universe's apex predator technology was reduced to smoking wreckage. But Marcus felt no satisfaction. Through his link with Zephyros, he could sense what the probe had accomplished before its destruction. It had transmitted everything it learned back to the main fleet. The Devourers now knew exactly what they were dealing with, and they would adjust their approach accordingly. "It matters not," Zephyros said, apparently sensing his concerns. "They would have learned our capabilities eventually. Better that they underestimate us than arrive prepared for our full strength." Our full strength. Marcus wiped sweat from his forehead, adrenaline still coursing through his system. "What you just did was incredible, but there are 3 massive ships heading this way. How is one dragon and one human supposed to stop them?" Instead of answering immediately, Zephyros began to change again. The biomechanical systems across his body shifted into new configurations, and Marcus realized the dragon was interfacing with something. Data streams that looked like liquid light flowed across his scales as he accessed information systems that had been dormant until now. Because, my friend, I was not just a guardian of the Nexus fleet. I was the guardian. The final repository of our combined knowledge, the last keeper of our most desperate contingency plans. Images flooded Marcus's mind. Not memories this time, but blueprints. Weapon designs that bent the laws of physics. Defensive technologies that could turn entire planets into fortresses. And, at the center of it all, a plan so audacious that even the desperate remnants of the Nexus fleet had hesitated to implement it. They called it the Prometheus Protocol, Zephyros explained. A way to take a species that had no hope of victory and give them the tools they needed to fight back. But it required something no other species possessed, which was the willingness to change themselves fundamentally, to sacrifice what they were in order to become what they needed to be. Most species would die before accepting such transformation. But humans, Marcus felt understanding dawn on him like a cold sunrise. Humans adaptado. It's what we do. Precisely. And now, Marcus Kane, I offer you and your species a choice. Remain as you are and face extinction, or allow me to share the genetic and technological legacy of 12 civilizations. Become more than human so that humanity might survive. The communication from Port Haven cut through their conversation like a knife. Sarah's voice was tight with controlled panic. Marcus, we're detecting massive energy buildups in the outer system. Whatever's coming, it's accelerating. Our best estimate is 18 hours until arrival. 18 hours to save the human race. Marcus looked at the wreckage of the probe, then at Zephyros. The dragon's alien eyes held depths of knowledge and power that no human mind should be able to comprehend. Yet somehow Marcus felt he could understand it all, if he chose to. What exactly are you proposing? Biotechnological integration. The same process that made me what I am, adapted for human physiology. You would retain your memories, your personality, your essential humanity. But you would also gain access to the collective knowledge and capabilities of the Nexus fleet. More importantly, you would become a template that could be rapidly replicated. You're talking about changing our entire species. I am talking about giving your species the weapons it needs to fight a war it cannot win any other way. But the choice must be freely made, and it must be made now. The first volunteer will face the greatest risk as we adapt the process for human biology. Marcus thought about his life. 40 years of protecting people who never knew his name, never knew the dangers he faced to keep their small corner of the universe safe. He'd lost everything that mattered to him decades ago, and since then, his existence had been about duty rather than hope. But now, looking at Zephyros and understanding what the dragon was offering, Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Purpose. Not just the quiet purpose of doing his job, but the burning purpose of fighting for something larger than himself. If I agree to this, will others be able to follow? If you survive the process, yes. Your transformation will provide the data we need to safely modify others. Within hours, we could have an army of biomechanically enhanced humans. Within days, your entire military could be upgraded. Within weeks, humanity becomes something new. Something capable of fighting the Devourers on equal terms. Marcus keyed his communicator. Sarah, I need you to patch me through to Earth Command. Emergency priority. Tell them that Ranger Kane has intelligence about the incoming threat, and I have a proposal that will sound insane, but might be our only hope. As the connection established, Marcus looked up at the alien sky, where death was approaching at a significant fraction of light speed. Somewhere above those unfamiliar stars, the Devourer fleet was preparing to add humanity to their list of extinct civilizations. But they had never fought humans before. They had never encountered a species that looked at impossible odds and responded with spite rather than surrender. And they had certainly never fought humans who had been given the technological legacy of 12 advanced civilizations. Are you certain about this choice? Zephyros asked as communications channels opened to every human world. There will be no going back. Marcus smiled, feeling more alive than he had in decades. I've been protecting humanity for 40 years. This is just the next step. The transformation began with light. Biomechanical systems flowed from Zephyros into Marcus's body like liquid starfire, rewriting his genetic code and integrating technologies that would have seemed like magic days before. Pain beyond description racked his body as every cell was systematically enhanced and modified. But through it all, Marcus Kane held on to one thought. Humanity had always been defined not by what they were, but by what they were willing to become in order to survive. The Devourers were about to learn why that was a very dangerous thing to underestimate. As the first biomechanically enhanced human opened eyes that could see across multiple spectrums of light and raised hands that could channel enough energy to level mountains, word went out across human space. The transformation was voluntary, but the response was immediate and overwhelming. Humanity had always risen to meet existential threats. This time, they would rise to meet them as something more than human. The real war was about to begin.